Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fabulous Mondays after the July 4th holiday. A lot to dive into. Big floods in Texas. I have a website I encourage you to make donations to if you can. Big, beautiful bill, Diddy, Epstein files. Penn apologizes for all of the lies. So many different directions to go. The Epstein files, if I didn't mention it. But I want to start right off the top with thanks for all of you making OutKick as big and influential as we have become, because I think that was tremendously important in the University of Pennsylvania deciding to apologize for allowing Leah Thomas to swim on the University of Pennsylvania team, a man pretending to be a girl who went on and won an NCAA championship and set a ton of records along the way. In particular, I don't know that this story would have ever been told or this situation wouldn't have been fixed if OutKick didn't exist. And I give credit to Paula Scanlon, who was a teammate of Leah Thomas's, a woman on the University of Pennsylvania swim team, who reached out to Joe Kinsey, one of our writers, back in the day, and said, hey, I've got a story for you. Nobody else in sports would write it. And I just want you to think about what that says about how broken the sports universe is, that a man pretending to be a woman and winning a women's NCAA championship, as happened in March of 2022, most sports media would not cover it because they were afraid of what the consequences of speaking out against this absurdity would be. And so, as a result, OutKick stood alone. We covered this. I give credit to Riley Gaines, who swam against Leah Thomas, to Paula Scanlon for speaking out. All of these different things would not have otherwise happened but for, I really believe, OutKick and our writers and our media coverage. And I give thanks to you guys for helping us grow to the point where this wrong has been rectified. And I do not believe it would have happened but for the University of Pennsylvania having to finally face the absurdity of the choices that they made. The Trump administration, Linda McMahon, and others held their feet to the fire on this, and they now have apologized publicly for allowing this to have occurred and have let everybody know that they were wrong. And this should have never happened. And the only reason why I believe it did happen is the cowardice that so many people out there in sports media had, that they were unwilling to speak out about this. And I think about it as simple as somebody pretending to be an age that they aren't. They shouldn't be able to compete. And 95% of probably male sports fans agree with me. Look, was it Danny Almonte back in the day? I think was the kid's name, who pretended that he was 12 years old, and they ended up finding out that he was 14 years old. And if you go back in time, age limits, size of school limits, weight limits, all of these things are the very essence of competition itself. And if you allow people who aren't eligible to compete, then this is what ends up happening because there's so much cowardice. So we're finally rectifying the crazy, broken parts of this story more than anything else, as we've had a huge impact here. And it's why OutKick had the best June ever. I don't know when that data is going to come out, but OutKick had the biggest June, I believe, in history. In a time when most sites are collapsing in size, we continue to grow, and I do feel very proud of the work that we did surrounding the University of Pennsylvania and all the lies that were told there. Okay. Let's go to a serious story that happened over the weekend. I think I said off the top, but I hope all of you had fantastic 4th of Julys. I did. I covered a lot of ground. I was in northern Michigan for basically the start of July 4th holiday time, and then I was on the Gulf of America for the inaugural Gulf of America July 4th, which was a lot of fun, where I spend a great deal of time down on the Panhandle in Florida. But northern Michigan, I think I said, most underrated place in America during the summer. A lot of people don't know how spectacular it is. Awesome time up there. But flooding hit in the Guadalupe River, Camp Mystic, Kerr, Texas. Awful, destructive flooding. I shared this on social media, so you can just go search out Clay Travis. But if you want to join me in donating, whatever you can afford to donate, everything helps. cftexashillcountry.fcsuite.com. That's cftexashillcountry.fcs fcsuite.com. Again, that is linked directly on my Twitter page. If you go to Clay Travis and you scroll down just a bit, you will see that Community Foundation website. I've donated. I would encourage you guys, if you have the ability, to donate as well. A lot of discussion about what happened with the floods and the loss of life, particularly devastating young life at Camp Mystic, which was a camp on the river, the Guadalupe River there. Basically, I lived through a version of this. You have a 100, 500 year, whatever you want to call it, an unprecedented level of flooding. Nashville had this about 15 years ago. I remember, I think it was 15 years ago, because my wife, I believe, was pregnant with our second child. And out of nowhere, we got like 15 inches of rain, and all of Nashville flooded. And it was unbelievable to see. And the tough thing about it was lots of people who didn't even know that they were in danger or that their property could flood suddenly flooded, and it happened really fast. And I think there will be a time to go back over everything that happened here. But it seems to have been a calamity. They had this massive, short period of time flood of rain. Most of the flooding then happened in the middle of the night. So there's all sorts of notifications, all sorts of flood notices, all of those things. But a lot of people were sleeping. And many of them did not become aware that this roaring floodwaters were coming in until basically they had already reached many of these locations. And unfortunately, it looks like there's going to be around 100 people who lost their lives, which is far too many. And the worst of all, young loss of life, young kids. People have already tried to turn it into a politics thing, which is just ridiculous. There's always going to be tornadoes. There's always going to be floods. There's always going to be hurricanes. I think it's appropriate to hold politicians accountable when they don't clean up after an event occurs or don't provide the necessary resources after an event occurs, a hurricane, fire. Maybe put the fire out in Los Angeles and have the ability to do it. But the idea that this was somehow President Trump's fault, or it's a governor's fault, or it's a congressman or voters. I mean, these little girls didn't vote for anybody. And I think the exact same loss of death and loss of life would have occurred if Joe Biden were president, or Kamala Harris were president, or George W. Bush were president, because the flooding didn't have anything to do with who was in office. And the loss of life didn't have anything to do with who was in office. Now, if you're asking me, hey, Clay, 100 people lose their lives, what could we do that would be more effective? I don't know the answer, to be candid, but I do know that in Nashville, where we've had a bunch of tornadoes, they put in place tornado sirens. Because I don't know about you guys, but in the middle of the night, I sometimes turn my phone off, and I'm not going to necessarily know. It's not like my television's going to turn on automatically and alert me that we're in the middle of a potential tornado. Now, we have a tornado shelter in the house, the steel structure that's supposed to be able to withstand Category 5 that we can go into if we think, oh, there's danger, storm's coming. But that wouldn't help necessarily at 3 or 4 a.m. if you're asleep, as many of these people were when these floodwaters hit. So part of me wonders, is there a way to have along the banks of the river some sort of alert system that would be loud like the tornado sirens are, so that people are aware, hey, these floods are coming? Because based on what I'm reading and seeing, what sounds awful was people became aware that their places were flooding when the water was already there. And the water came up so quickly that a lot of people were just unable to get away. And so I think that's probably going to be one of the aspects of this story that gets looked at. Again, if the Trump administration does a poor job in the wake of the floods, then I think that is fair game, just like it's fair game to challenge and criticize any politician when it comes to a response to a weather event. But for the weather event itself, nobody chooses to make a hurricane happen as a politician. Nobody chooses to make a flood happen. Nobody chooses to make a tornado happen. I don't know. I think social media makes it worse. I saw a lot of awful things like, hey, this is what happened. You deserve some pediatrician was like, hey, I hope that, I don't know what makes people behave in that way, but I think you have a dark, dark part of your soul if the first thing that you think when something bad happens is, I hope as many people as possible die, because that's a part of the country that I've decided bad people live in. Again, there's a hole in your heart, a hole in your soul. So if you want to help, cftexashillcountry.fcsuite.com. And you can go look that up at Clay Travis. I shared it. I donated it. I would encourage you guys to do as well. Okay. Big, beautiful bill passes. Told you it was going to happen. That there would be a lot of drama. That ultimately it was going to pass. It passed. Here, to me, is the focus now. It needs to be on growth, growth, growth. We have to get the economy growing at a 3+% rate, because then we will be able to produce enough growth that we can hopefully grow to a point where, unfortunately, the budget is balanced. Here's the truth. There isn't a political will to address spending. We do not have a revenue problem. We've got a spending problem. And as soon as you start spending, when you try to dial it back, the media all runs around saying, you're going to cut, you're going to cut. You're not actually cutting. You're just slowing the rate of growth. And for those of you out there that have ever put on weight, if you put on 10 pounds, 10 pounds, 10 pounds, and then in year 4 you only put on 5, that's not a cut. You're just slowing the rate at which you're getting fatter. You're still getting fatter. So we're not actually dialing back and cutting, which is what we need to do. We're just slowing the rate of how much we increase. And I feel like a lot is getting fixed in the first 6 months of the Trump administration. But no matter who the president is, I think there are 2 major issues that are broken that need to be addressed. One is taxes. The other is health care. Both of those entities are fundamentally broken and I believe are a drag on the overall American economy. On taxes, we now have tax certainty, but I'm going to pay, just giving you an example, 37% to the federal government of what I make for my labor. That means that, and I basically work 7 days a week, But let's pretend that I only work 5 days a week. Let's pretend that Saturday and Sunday I completely don't work. I know a lot of you work on Saturday and Sunday too, but let's just pretend that I only work Monday to Friday. That means that Monday and Tuesday I am working entirely for the federal government. It isn't until Wednesday that I actually make any money at all. It's crazy. And that's considered to be not high enough tax rates for large portions of the left in this country. They're like, oh, Clay Travis, he needs to pay higher than 37% of his wage. Well, how much higher? If I lived in New York, California, or Illinois, I would be working half the week to totally give my money to taxes, to people that aren't paying any taxes at all. It's crazy town. Crazy town. And so our taxes are broken. Healthcare is also broken. Healthcare, because we have totally unattached it from expense, it's the only thing that you use that you have no idea what it cost. And I gave this example because when I had my sons, my wife had the sons, when I was in the room while they were born, I tried to figure out how much it was going to cost. What am I going to have to pay? Nobody could tell me. We went and toured all these different hospitals so my wife could decide, hey, which hospital do we want to go to? And they were like, hey, we've got Wi-Fi here. Hey, we got bamboo floors. Hey, we've got these security systems in place. All that's fine. But imagine you were going to tour hotels or apartments and nobody told you what it was going to cost to stay there. Or you went and toured a house and you were shopping for a house. And you said, okay, well, what's this cost? And they said, don't worry about it. No one can tell you what any healthcare costs. And, okay, if you said, well, yeah, you're right. Like, this isn't the great system, but we get so much better results than everybody else. But we don't. We spend way more in America on healthcare. And yet, where are we? Like, 50th highest on life expectancy? I don't know. I don't think we're in the top 20. So we're spending way more than every country, and we're not getting extra years of life. That seems like a flaw to me. So I think there are two profoundly broken parts of the American larger structure of our government. One is taxing. Two is healthcare. Both are tremendous drags on the economy and aren't being efficiently implemented in a way that makes sense. But Big Beautiful Bill is passed. It's not perfect, but I agree with much of it. Diddy, not guilty on the major RICO charges. I talked a little bit about this with all of you. I am not surprised by the result because I said if I were on the jury, I would be a not guilty here. Not because I think Diddy is some amazing guy, but because the government didn't prove their case. There was lots of evidence that these women who testified were there consensually. The government tried to argue that they were coerced and a part of a larger criminal organization. I don't think the evidence ever reflected that. Now, again, if the government had prosecuted Diddy on having guns illegally, easy case. Having drugs, easy case. If they had prosecuted before the statute of limitations ran out on the video of him beating up his girlfriend in the LA hotel, easy case. But they didn't do those cases. They tried to argue that he was running some sort of criminal enterprise, and I think he just had a freaky sex interests, which isn't necessarily criminal. And the women who he was dating were willing to engage in that behavior consensually because they wanted to stay in a relationship with him. They may not have liked that aspect of the relationship, but they found it to be They were willing to do it consensually because they thought it made him happier and they were willing to stay in the relationship with him. I think the jury got this right. I think Diddy, look, I'm not defending him, but his behavior is certainly morally indefensible. But I don't think they proved beyond a reasonable doubt the charges that they brought against him. And frankly, I think he should be out on bail. And he's already served nearly a year in prison. I don't think he's going to have to serve that much more. I think 10 months he's been in jail. They haven't allowed him out. I don't think he's going to have to serve that much more. And so, again, to me, I give credit to the New York jury because I think they accurately deduced that the women in this case consented to engage in much of this behavior. Zoran Kwame Mamdani, caught on his Columbia application clicking the box that he was African American and black, as well as Asian. For those of you who don't know, he was born in Uganda, moved to the United States when he was 7, did not become a citizen of the United States until 2018. So he lied on his college application because he was not African American, meaning American who was from Africa. Like under this categorization, Charlize Theron or Elon Musk would be able to click that they are African American because they were born in Africa and now live in America and are citizens. They're legitimately African American because they were born there and now live in America. But Zoran Mamdani was not African American at the time that he applied to Columbia, and he certainly wasn't black. He's an Indian guy who was born in Uganda. But his middle name is Kwame, which was given to him because I guess the leader of Uganda when he was born was named Kwame. At least that's the report that I've seen. So his name is Zoran Kwame Mamdani. He was pretending and hoping that he was going to get away with being seen as black because that would have increased the odds that he would be admitted to Columbia. He was not admitted. He did okay, not spectacular. They've changed the way that they grade the SAT, but according to Chris Rufo, Mamdani got in the 89th percentile on the SAT, which would be around a 1280, which is nowhere near good enough for an Asian or white guy to be admitted to Columbia. Certainly not someone who's Asian or white and from New York City. And so I think he was trying to pretend that he was part black because he knew that it would be a competitive advantage for him when it came to admissions. I'm curious if he did the same thing on other applications that he filed because it seems likely that that was the case. And I think because his middle name was Kwame, he thought, oh, maybe they'll think that I'm African American or black because of my middle name and the fact that he's dark-skinned. I don't know if you sent in a picture at the time for your application. I can't remember. It's been a long time. I think everybody does what's called the Common App now. I did not do that. I don't remember exactly what the applications were like when I applied. I'm thinking about it. I've been thinking about it more because my oldest is about to start his college admissions process. And for some reason, I applied only to schools in North Carolina, Virginia, and D.C. Nowhere else in the country. I was like, I like this, I don't know, 800-mile region. I applied to Davidson, Wake Forest, UVA, George Washington, Georgetown. I believe that, did I say Wake Forest? Wake Forest if I didn't. Those were the schools that I applied to. I got in everywhere. I got waitlisted at Georgetown. I got a scholarship, and they gave me all the academic credits for my AP, so it knocked out my whole first year at GW. So I went to the school that gave me the most money and gave me the most AP credits when I applied to colleges, and I went off to college in 97. But you had to do each individual application at that point in time. And I don't really know why I decided North Carolina, Virginia, D.C., that was the only region of the country that I was going to apply to. I don't really understand why I did that. But that was the way that I applied. And I applied as a white kid. And I was held to a super high standard for both undergrad and law school, because white men were held to, and still are, I think, held to the highest standards of test scores and everything else. And Mamdani likely knew, because he's Asian, that he was going to be held to a high standard. And so I think he tried to pretend that he was black, because it would have helped him to get admitted to what he considered to be a better school. And I think he got caught in it. And it's not dissimilar to me to Elizabeth Warren, a.k.a. Pocahontas, who clearly traded on the fact that she said she was Native American as an advantage in her career, even though she has basically no Native American background at all. And ultimately, what I think this is demonstrating is the absurdity of using race to set different standards based on the color of your skin. To the extent that diversity matters, the only diversity that matters is diversity of thought. And many of these colleges fail that aspect of the diversity challenge, because they have a lot of people who look different but think the exact same. And what you really need is people who think different, regardless of what they look like. And so I think Mamdani is a fraud. I think that if Elon Musk had done exactly what Mamdani did, people on the left in this country would lose their mind over Elon Musk, who was born in South Africa and lived there 18 years. Claiming to be African American would drive them bonkers. Mamdani claiming to be African American when he was not American, and when he certainly was not black, I think is just evidence that he is a liar and completely untrustworthy. Okay, finally, Epstein files. My theory on Epstein, and I've said this for a long time, is that he was some form of intelligence asset. Maybe for the United States, maybe for Israel, maybe for other countries. And that is why he got lenient treatment from the court system. If you missed it on Sunday night, there was a announcement that there were no additional charges coming out of the Epstein files. There was no additional information. There was a video that was posted. I do think the video makes it more likely that Epstein killed himself. I know there are a lot of coincidences that seem unlikely. Guard falls asleep. Cameras aren't working on the hallway where he kills himself. I still find it hard to believe that level of incompetence could occur in a suicide, was supposed to be a suicide-proof area. But why was he treated leniently? I think because he was an asset for intelligence agencies. What I just talked about on Clay and Buck, I don't understand how he became nearly a billionaire. Usually, in order to become a billionaire, you have to engage in public behavior where a lot of people would say, okay, I can see how that happens, right? You run a hedge fund. You found a company. You're a high-ranking official inside of a young company, and you're making tens of millions of dollars, and there's evidence of all the money that you made. This guy ended up with nearly $700 million in assets that we know of, and he never actually built anything. He wasn't a private equity guy. He wasn't running a hedge fund. He wasn't he wasn't Warren Buffett. He wasn't some incredible investor. How did all that happen? I think he was engaged in shady behavior. And I think he was trading on the shady behavior that he got. And so I don't think that Dan Bongino or Kash Patel or Pam Bondi are covering up anything. I think by the time they got into office, there was nothing else left. And if there were proverbial smoking guns in the files, in the videos, in the assets, I think those were destroyed a long time ago. So that is my theory on Epstein. again, as I finish off this Monday edition of the OutKick Show, cftexashillcountry.fcsfcsuite.com. I'll retweet that right now. If you can afford to make a donation to everybody in the Guadalupe River Basin, Camp Mystic, any of those individuals that lost their lives or their families, I would encourage you to do so. cftexashillcountry.fcsuite.com. And again, I will share that link. Love all of you. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'll be back tomorrow. This has been OutKick, the show.